Hey there, AGA members. Chris Garlock here with Michael Redmond. Today we're diving into the 33rd game in the AlphaGo self-play series. But before that, you know what's coming. I got to give a huge thanks to all of our AGA members. It's your support that makes these videos possible. And if you'd like to help as well, head on over to usgo.org and join us. So, game 33, we are just plowing through these. It's great.
Yeah. Well, this time we're going to be seeing some slightly unusual josekis, I guess. With the 3-3 invasion, the direct 3-3 invasion, we're going to see one of the fighting follow-ups after the joseki. We're going to see one of the some of the fighting that people worry about. It's an issue. So we're going to look into that one.
All right.
And it's going to be a lot of fighting this game, but it's not going to be a crash like 32 was. It's going to go on to the end, and another of those close games.
All right.
You're going to think the group is dead, but it's not.
It's AlphaGo. I never think anything is dead. I think everything is almost dead.
Yeah, that sounds more reasonable. Yeah. So we have this joseki. AlphaGo still likes to play this joseki. And black never plays the extension at A. It's almost non-existent. So black plays the Kahari here. And in this game, white plays the two-space pincer. So this is a point where there's a number of games that are sort of similar to this. White could have played at A. If white had played at A, black probably would have... let's do that. Let's give that variation. I think black follows up by playing the attachment in the corner. We probably have a game like this at some point. I forget what number it was. But white plays the pincer here and plays this move. Now this move was actually played by humans a lot. It became a popular move. I forget when. Maybe I have it in the file, but probably a couple of decades ago. So it's a relatively modern move that despite that, it did happen before AlphaGo. And the idea is that when this happens and this happens, the basic idea behind this move is that at this point, we're comparing it with, we're comparing it with this joseki. So I'll show you this joseki first. So in this joseki, black plays here and crawls and gets to play the hanetsugi and jumps. So this is still a valid joseki for black. Black could have played this way. So we're going to compare this to that joseki. Now if black... and the point is that black has lost the opportunity to play the hanetsugi. Black needs to play something if black wants to get rid of the push through and cut here. And apparently AlphaGo doesn't feel the need to do that. But usually you would want to get rid of the push through and cut here if you were a human player. I think you would. And black has lost the opportunity of fixing that with this hanetsugi because this is actually a basic tesuji problem that if you're heading towards Shodan, for instance, you've probably seen this in a book somewhere, or maybe on the internet, because it's an opportunity for white to push through and cut here, when black still has to worry about this cut on the left. So this is a double threat here that white has. And if black captures the ones, white can actually just play one cut here, and we'll probably, in this game, white will switch back to the left side. And already that cut there that white got is an extra value there. So if black plays at A, basically white plays at B and gets all these extra forcing moves. So that would be good for white. And so you would think that black is going to play something like this, for instance. In which case we compare it to this joseki and say that it's more efficient if black can play the hanetsugi on the second line and get rid of that cutting point. So that's the whole idea behind white's knight's move here, is that white can, the jumping into the 3-3 point was not as attractive as it was if black had just done this joseki. So that was the whole idea there, and that's what made this very popular. There's all sorts of difficult complications if black does something like this. That would be a completely different variation. I think this move was first played by Lee Chan-ho. And again, I don't have a strong recollection of when it was, probably a couple of decades ago. But this is a move where black is threatening, and here I'm just relying on my memory, but for instance, something like this, a fight like this where black would have opportunities to play like this in the corner. Let's see, what the ladder is not good, so black has to do something about the ladder first. Black would curl around in this case. But at some point, black's going to go back to the corner with moves like this, and black can make a life fairly easily in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And so this kind of thing is actually a very real possibility. And even if white plays on the top, there's always the threat of playing here and looking to cut white off.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a variation of that is pretty hard to figure out. There's a lot of variations after that. But in the game, black played fairly simply. So AlphaGo doesn't seem to mind the fact that black cannot play. Black doesn't want to play here. This would be slow. But the fact that black cannot play here to fix his shape is apparently not an issue for AlphaGo. So AlphaGo just plays here, making a living shape on the left, in the upper left. This since the left side it looks like it's going to be white's territory. I guess it's okay to play all the way to this point. Now, white does have this weakness in the corner. The game move, white just answered simply here. But if white pushes through here, it's probably not a big enough deal. Like in game 31 and game 32, we've been talking about similar positions.
Right.
Black will always capture the cutting stone. So whichever side white cuts, black's going to capture that stone and get a profit on that side. So in this case, if white cuts on the outside, this is okay. The local result is okay for black. So this would be maybe a bit better than the starting position for black.
Mm-hmm.
White covers here, and black just pushes. This is a point where if I was black, I would be thinking of playing away at this point.
I was just about to ask that because it just seems slow, right?
It's slow. It does have the threatened. The hane here is a pretty big point.
Okay.
I guess that sort of makes up for it. But I would not be thinking of playing that move. It's a point where white could also curl around next. For instance, if black... this is a point I would be thinking of playing. But white can curl around here. But again, when black plays here to protect the left side, this gives black the wedge later. The wedge at this point to take away white's territory. So it's a worthwhile move for black to be playing anyway. So I would say this would be a good time for black to be playing away.
Yeah.
But it's a thick. You could say it's a thick move.
It's thick.
And of course, playing at A is another move that could be considered. Although, as I was saying, black's just ready to capture the cutting stone here on the lower left corner. It's not as important as people used to think it is. So black can just leave that for the time being. So white plays in the corner. A reasonable looking move. Black pincers. And now white jumps into the 3-3 point. And this is really counterintuitive. I still don't like this move, especially in this board position where white has that solid shape in the upper left corner. The fact that white has such a strong low shape in the upper left corner sort of signals to me that the upper side in general is going to be small. So white doesn't really want to do anything towards the upper side. That's the way I would look at it.
Where would you play?
So I would play at A. You can see it marked.
Oh, okay, okay.
And that's because this move has just become very, very popular after AlphaGo. It was actually AlphaGo who made this move popular. And if black rolls, we're going to see black's going to have a very low position on the lower side. If black pushes through and cuts, and that's the reason I didn't make this a variation in the SGF, because when black pushes through and cuts, it gets really, really complicated if white does stuff like this. And this is a very popular variation of the joseki. It's just extremely complicated. At this point, people are still studying it. People have their secrets. And I'm not sure what the correct variation is at this point. So there's a lot of possibilities. It's playable in any case. The fact that in this position, white would be prepared to sacrifice stones on the lower side and would be hoping to make a good shape towards the right side. Okay. And it looks like, so eventually, the old joseki, that would be the relatively simple move, would be to play here and just allow black to capture that one stone and probably move towards the right side. So this would be closer to the old. Actually, the orthodox joseki would have white extending and black playing something like. In this board position, it's not going to happen this way. But so maybe that's why I'm suggesting this move. But that's the general idea. Would be something like this would be the right direction of play for white.
Okay.
So that's why I would want to play here. And jumping into 3-point seems premature to me. But AlphaGo likes it. And black plays this joseki. So now black adds a stone to the corner. This is a point where black could have continued in the upper right corner with A or B. And the interesting thing about this is that if black plays the variation started with A, it turns black's wall around to be facing to the upper left, and so in a bad direction, basically. So let's do that variation just to show what I'm talking about. For instance, if black plays this one.
Right.
This is a very popular joseki nowadays.
Yeah.
But in this board position, black would be pointing completely in the wrong direction. The ladder favors. The ladder doesn't even favor black, so black cannot play here. Black would probably play something like this. But it's pretty obvious that black's wall is pointed in the wrong direction. So this would just be good for white. So that rules out this move. And it's just that AlphaGo just doesn't seem to like this move at all. It's an even result, I would say. In this game, white would probably still want to move towards the left side. So maybe something like this on the left side. White would be wanting to invade I should say the right side. The right side, white would want to erase the right side. The right side, the upper half of the right side is probably more important than the lower right corner at this point.
Sure. Has AlphaGo ever played that crawl? I don't remember it ever playing that crawl.
The extension.
Yeah, the extension. Sorry.
Here.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen AlphaGo play this move. Maybe it has in some of its Moyo games, but it's a bit it doesn't like this move. And so black doesn't really have any good local ideas. So going back, if black wanted to play more constantly in the upper right corner, I think the joseki choice in this case would be the double hane. In which case, I was saying at some point that if you look through my videos, you will. I think maybe game 32, I was saying that locally this is a loss for black. It's usually considered to be a loss for black, but just the fact that white, the upper side is a relatively small area. White's strength in the upper side is not so important. Like this is just going to be this territory that white is building on the upper side is sort of based on the third line. So if, at some point, if we have black, let's just have, white has to play this point to build it up to the fifth line, and still it will not be equal to the influence black is getting in the center of the board.
Right.
So it's really hard for white to build that upper side into a big structure. It's not really worth it. So black would play that variation, the double hane. And white at this point would just leave it. So white would get sente. Actually, the computers like to play this immediately. And white would probably still jump into the right side. So it would be this kind of thing. This is something that black could have done. This is what I would be thinking of doing if I was black. And the reason is that sort of at this point, black has run out of good local moves. You have this move, which AlphaGo doesn't like. And you have this move, which ends up with black's wall pointing in the wrong direction.
Right.
So black doesn't have a good local choice. And so black plays away. So I guess that makes sense. But it's going to lead into one of the more complicated fights stemming from this joseki. Because white immediately cuts here.
Wow.
And this is a bit troublesome. It's a troublesome fight that you have to be ready for this when you're playing with black and you've played away. At this point, when you played away, you have to be ready for the cut here. Like an easy way for white to play. That's the move I wanted to play. But in the upper right corner, this would be the simple local move. In this case, black would be happy to give the upper side to white and probably add a stone to the right side here. Just because there's so much distance there. But the move I wanted to play was this. Again, this is an AlphaGo move. It's a dangerous move, but after AlphaGo, we've decided that it's playable. Like if black pushes through and cuts here, white's going to squeeze from this side. And there's a lot of there are variations where black can sometimes capture white on the right side or capture white on the lower side. At this point, it depends on how both players handle the local fight. I'm going to show one variation which is pretty... In this case, black does want to take the right side. Black would rather take the right side, so this is how I expect black to play. And white's going to get a good position on the lower side in return. So this is one way white could have continued. And this is playable for white. Basically, although black is pointed in the right direction, black is building on the right side, it's still too wide open for black to make the whole right side territory. So if white's next move, if white gets a chance, white's next move will be diving into the right side.
Yeah.
And so with black's next move, black's going to have to find a way to handle that. And it looks like it's an okay game for white. Probably about even playing, I think. So that's the move I would be thinking of playing. But this is also a very strong attack, taking advantage of the fact that black played away from the joseki. So it makes sense. But it gets very difficult. So white crawls here and extends in the center. So now black has two relatively weak groups, and the white weak group. So it's a kind of a running fight in the center of the board. And the game black played from the center. So black's natural move to play something like this would allow white to play here. And we can see the upper side is going to be white attacking black.
Yeah.
So, and of course the right side is not black's territory yet. It's still too wide open. So this is a pretty important point here, that black almost always takes in this variation. And when white attacks on the right side, which is not the game move, black can force in the corner with this move. Black has a number of ways of handling this weak group. This is the most exciting, and it's the strongest play because the hane in the corner is a real threat there. So like if white answers here, then black can escape to the side. So that's easy. The problem happens when white tries to surround from the outside, but this is a very important hane that black gets. And it turns out that white's not strong enough on the outside with this cut here.
Oh, wow.
And so this is the variation I made. And the fact that black gets this forcing move on the second line against white's corner, squeezing the corner, that's going to be a 4-point territory. And black is attacking on the right side of the board. So basically with those two white groups, let's mark the two white groups with triangles, this group and this group.
Sure.
White had to handle both of those groups. And it turns out that the weak black groups were not as weak as one might have imagined. With that forcing move on the second line. And this extra stone that black has on the side here is making a big difference here. So this was playable for black. And usually black has a number of ways to handle this move. Like, for instance, another way to do it, if black is in a more dangerous position, black would be able to play here and the double attachment. Not the most elegant of moves, but again, at this point, black is threatening to capture through white stones in the corner, in the center, and easily lives. And again, this point here is going to be a forcing move against the corner. The corner is going to be a ko if white leaves that. So this is another way black can handle it. This is the way black would handle it if black, for instance, if black maybe did not have this stone on the board, or maybe white had a stone in the vicinity. This would be the safer way for black to handle that. But in this game position, I was having black handle it by playing the strongest move. And this is the move that black wants to play here. So that's what happens when white attacks there. In the game, white played the attachment here. And we can see that having this attachment could potentially change what happens on the right. So for instance, if black plays here, white pulls back. Towards the center, that exchange was really nice for black, but it's going to change what happens on this side. It's going to be a lot more dangerous for black. So that's the idea behind white's attachment, you might say. And black black plays one hane here and then counters. Oh, black played this way, sorry. So this is the game move. This is always a very important point. So like black's hanging connection here, the kaketsugi, is almost always a forcing move. Like most of the time it's forcing. You do have to be careful of the exceptions to the rule. Like for instance, in this variation, where it turned out not to be forcing and white gets around from the outside. There are some exceptions like this, but almost always that hanging connection is going to be forcing. And in this case, it is. I made a variation of white playing another move in the center. This is just very painful for white when black does this. Again, it's going to be a 4-point territory there for white. If black plays a hane on this, well, black can play here. White has a number of ways of making life, but if we look at it this way, it's just 4 points there on the side. So it's a relatively small white territory, and black has enough room to make a life on the upper side. So this is okay for black.
Yeah, it looks fun.
So that's just squeezing the corner like that is so valuable. Like in this position, white has more like 10 points. So that's a big difference in the white territory. So now if black had played here, I'm making a variation for just about every move here. So if white had played here, now black doesn't have that forcing move on the upper side, and black has to run out. So that's actually a 1-move difference there on the upper side. When white plays this move in the corner, white got almost, you could almost say that in the fight on the upper side, in the center of the board, because of that move white played in the corner, white got a 1-move advantage in the center fight. Because black has to run out like this. And white would play something like this now. Just too small of a scale for black on the right side. So this would be okay for white. So instead, black counterattacks strongly here. Now this is a kind of a critical position for white. White's in a bit of trouble. If white cuts here, it turns out that it's not as if white's going to die. I found a way to say this.
Really?
But it's going to be bad anyway.
It looks pretty bad.
White can push through here to get an extra liberty. However black plays that, white's going to get, like black could have played here and then here. It's more or less the same story. So however black plays it, white's going to get 2 liberties there. So white can play here and push through. At this point, black has a good move. So black gets some extra squeezing value when black crawls here. Because the ladder favors black. And so if white extends here, black just cuts. So that's good.
Okay.
And the point is that if black had played something like this and white like this, the squeeze would have been less than perfect. Like there's that weakness on the outside, and black doesn't get any extra squeezing value. So this move really squeezes extra, because white has to connect here. As I was showing you in this variation, the ladder favors black, so it has to connect here. And black covers, forcing white to play the cut. And black gets the squeeze. So this is just too much of a squeeze. It's a win for black. It's really important for especially the weaker players to realize that you can be capturing a lot of stones, capturing 4 stones in this case, and just losing the game because of it. Because you have to be very careful of giving your opponent thickness in the center of the board. That's very valuable.
It's a really important lesson because, and you'll often see that when the white player is giving, like whenever a white player is offering me a group, I always get suspicious. It's going to cost me something.
A local victory can often be a loss on the whole board position. So cutting here was not so good. So white plays this move. It looks like it's a failure for white, but black does have to be careful about what's happening on the right side too. So black connects, white covers. Again, white's looking for a way to capture black on the right side. For instance, if black cuts here, white will jump. And then capturing here is an important move, which it gets rid of the cut here, the cut at this point. So black capturing this stone stops that. It also takes away black's liberties. So black will connect here, and white will connect. There's no way for black to capture this group. It looks dangerous, but it's squeezing out.
Yeah.
So in this case, it's squeezing out. And this would be okay for white. It would be a fightable position. Like black would extend, and white would probably start squeezing from here. It's going to be a very complicated fight, but let's just... Now here I'm sort of on dangerous ground because I haven't really worked this out. But it looks okay for white when white has this cut here. Like moves like this to put black in trouble on the right side.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So I'll leave it there. Probably haven't made a lethal mistake yet. We'll
hear about it if you did.
They're very tight positions, so it's hard to say. But if black cuts here, there will be there's potential for black to squeeze white, but probably not quite good enough for black.
Right.
So black starts the ko. Just to give, if white connects at A, it's going to be a good forcing exchange. And this ko here, which I was showing you this move. Let's go back to this move. I was saying that this move is always forcing, almost always forcing.
Sure.
It's a move, so because it's a forcing move that strengthens black on the right side, you see it happening a lot in this joseki variation. And it's a move that black can use almost always in a number of these variations where white has jumped into the 3-3 point. So it's a forcing move that black is commonly using. And now this move is a follow-up to that move, in which black is trying to force white to connect at A. And again, if black captures at A, it's going to be huge.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to say about this move is once black starts this ko, it's suddenly a huge ko. So when black does it, black wants to have one good ko threat. Or an advantage of one ko threat.
Mm-hmm.
Black needs to have that ko threat to make this ko work. So it's required that black has a good ko threat. And we're going to see that black has the best conceivable ko threat. And even so, white's going to finish the ko. So black has this ko threat, which is going to capture the cutting stones.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's the best kind of ko threat that I can think of. This settles all of black's local problems. And it turns out that it's still okay for white to capture the ko. So even if black has a ko threat like this, which is capturing the keystones, it should be one of the most powerful ko threats you can find on the board. Mm-hmm. And still it's okay for white to finish the ko. So that's my example of, well, it's the game sequence, but it's also an example of how important this ko is once black starts it. Wow. So when you do that, play this move here. You have to be aware of the fact that you need a very powerful ko threat to back it up.
Okay.
Because even this ko threat, I wouldn't say it's not good enough. I'd say it's about even. But you need something at least of this value. And the value of this move is not only to get something like close to 10 points there in the local position, but of course the fact that it's connecting all of those weak black groups.
Right. Yeah, it solves everything. It solves everything.
But when white has captured that stone at B, most of black's potential on the right side of the board is gone just because of that. It's that powerful a move. White does have this forcing move that white can play at any. It's not going to play it for... White never played that move really well. White played it when it seemed to be too late. But that's just some more of AlphaGo's tricks.
Right.
Yeah, so white switches to the lower side. It's interesting that white doesn't play at A, is never playing at B either. So those are moves that human players would be thinking of playing. I would be thinking of playing A or B. Mm-hmm. But the fact, like before I was saying that the upper side is not such a big area, the same can be said of the lower side. The lower side is relatively small compared to the center of the board and the right side. So black plays here. And so I would be expecting white to continue on the right side. But white actually switched to the lower right. Left.
Of course.
And so white chose to cut this side. Again, black is going to capture the cutting stone.
Right.
In this case, by capturing the cutting stone, black's advantage is that black now has a living shape in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if white had cut this side and black had connected, then the corner would not yet be alive, and black would have to play this move. And in this board position, white's not going to answer that.
Mm-hmm.
And so white's going to maybe play something to finish the ladder. Or maybe, actually, white can the ladder is favoring white already, so white could play something like this.
Yeah.
And the reason the left side there is not so important is because it connects to stuff that white can be doing, for instance, like this on the left side. White gets an extra forcing move here. White's going to get some, be forcing black to play another move to make that work on the left side. So it's not so valuable as it usually is. So white cuts on this side. Sorry, this is the game move, yeah. So white takes in a ladder. But just to push through the point that black is going to capture the cutting stone. So that's what happened in the game. And it's nice to see how AlphaGo, obviously AlphaGo doesn't know those rules of thumb. It doesn't know those Go proverbs, but they're valid enough that it follows them.
Mm-hmm.
So with this move in the center of the board, black is breaking the ladder, and white answered it. It's a point where white could have played at A or B. That would have been a lot more exciting. And then black would have had potential to escape from the ladder. But in the game, black played. This is a big move too. Here we're going to see an example of how to deal with a weak group like this. Like there's a tendency to play moves like this. But actually, in this case, where white doesn't really have anywhere to go to, a contact move is more effective. So white plays the contact move here. This is a really good move. And then plays the hane. So white's just getting that much more space by playing these contact moves against black. So this was the game move. If black plays on the outside, white's just going to, it looks very vulgar. But the extra space that white is getting is important in this case. And of course, the thickness that black is building, like if black does something like this and white does something like this, the thickness that black is building is sort of over-concentrated. It's a lot of thickness where black already had some strength. So it's okay for white to be playing all of these Atari moves, which are usually considered to be a bit vulgar. It's okay in this position. So especially when you're inside your opponent's area of strength, like in a moyo or something like that, it can often be very effective to be playing forcing moves up to the point where you get a living shape. So you have to read it out, obviously. But playing elegant moves like this, being less forceful, can actually be more dangerous. There's a high percentage that this is going to be more dangerous. Like, for instance, when black does something like this, it's much more difficult for white to make an actual living shape. But white gets a kind of a momentum when white plays these attachment moves to make a living shape. So black cuts, white plays here, and white extends down. White has a living shape. Like black could have played the Atari here. This might have been better, but yeah, there's this weakness in the center of the board. It's not as if white's going to, if white had answered that like this would have been actually not so good for white. This is, locally it's dead.
Yeah, terrible.
So this is white's chance to break through in the center.
Right.
And something like this might happen. White actually breaks through into the center, but waits to this point to actually do it. And this is just good for white. It's a variation that I worked out with Leela, but white's okay. It's playable for black too. I would say it's the other way that black could have played. But instead black played here. And then black played away. So this was always, it was a long time in past history when I was telling you this was an important point.
Yeah.
You might remember that when black pushed, it was when black pushed at this point. So it was early in the opening game.
Right.
I was saying
that was slow.
It was a bit slow, but black does have this big hane, the follow-up. And it's working in this board position because black is starting to build a center.
Wait, what move number is this?
75.
75. Wow. Okay.
It's also a point where black could have played a forcing move here. And white would have to play something to live in the corner. Like the local move would be to play here to make a living shape on the side. That's just alive. It's simply alive. And so you could say that this makes it easy for white. But it also, it cools down the general area. And there's some value in that because in the game position, white's going to break out. So I sort of debated with myself whether black should have played this move because it would be there would be a local profit for black in the upper right area. Black would be gaining territory. But black didn't play that. So I that's still something that I sort of question. I'm not sure about it myself. I'm not sure how whether I would want to play it. I would probably try both ways if I had two chances, and I probably would still not know because it's just going to change the way the game continues. So black plays here, and white actually just leaves it. So white's sort of in trouble on the left side of the board there.
Yeah.
But it's a case where you might say AlphaGo just doesn't care.
Wow.
And there's a lot of nuances to that. There's the fact that white at some point will be making a placement here.
Oh, right.
Threatening one Mortari or the other one, connecting to one side or the other. The fact that white is looking to play this move at some point, it reduces the value of that white territory on the left side. It reduces the value, potential of black capturing those 3 stones. Otherwise, white has a forcing move here. This is threatening to make a ko of the corner. White also has this move, which is more practical, which is reducing any loss that might take on the right side, at the same time as squeezing the corner to just a 2-point life. So there's this move. Again, this move also has the effect of reducing the value of whatever might happen on the left side. That said, the instinct, the human reaction to this hane would be to protect the left side.
Right.
But in seeing AlphaGo play away and thinking about it, I do understand that the left side is not nearly as important as it seems at first. Like it looks like white has to protect that territory. The territory is not so big because when white does that, then black is going to be getting all of these forcing moves. All of this is now black's, and eventually if black plays something like this, black is still threatening to do stuff like this to reduce the left side. So the left side territory is really going to be squeezed and squeezed over again. It's not worth it.
Right.
And so the white territory there is not so significant. It's not as big as it seems to be. Just because black is going to be getting all the yosei, all the endgame moves there.
Well, so that sort of answers your question earlier about the marked move is actually.
I still don't like it. Yeah, that's my conclusion.
Right.
In this game, it's working fairly well towards the center, so that makes it a worthwhile move. But the fact that I've realized the left side is not so important also, it changes it a bit.
Right.
I still don't really. I think that sort of adds to my dislike of that pushing move. It seems a bit slow.
Yeah.
So white plays this move. It's a big move on the side, and black extends. So this is, although it's threatening to play a day, and actually playing a day is a big move that is going to come into play at some point. It's still not big enough for white to immediately answer.
I mean, white has already said how many times that doesn't care about those stones. So
doesn't care. And black's still playing here. Well, a lot of the value of this move is towards the center, actually. So it's okay that black is building on the center at the same time as sort of pretending to threaten the left side. You can see that black is not going to play there immediately either. So it's not as if black is some retarded version of AlphaGo. It's understanding. So white plays here. And at this point, there's no reason for black to be fighting back. Like if black cuts here, white's going to play here. Black gets a nice little squeeze here, but it's sort of a dead end because after this, black doesn't have any. Black has to go back to saving the corner, and white's getting a nice position on the side. So it's not really worth it, black. So in the game, black just plays a honey underneath. It doesn't bother to cut white. It makes sense. But now, as you see, as I was saying, black has lost the opportunity to force with this stuff.
Right.
Forcing with a move like this is sometimes forcing, but it's not quite as satisfying because the side is still open. So there's a difference there, kind of a lost opportunity. But to get to this point, it did take white 2 moves. So it's sort of ambiguous there. And black plays this move in the center. It's a nice move. It's leaving the threat of the cut, looking at the move at A next.
Yeah, it's looking like a center moyo is beginning to develop nicely for
Right.
black, right?
So black is sort of pretending that it wants to cut here.
Mm-hmm.
And there is some value to that cut eventually. We're going to see that cut come into play. Um, and also getting rid of potential for white. For like, if black had not played that move, then there would have been potential. Let's just have black play some random other move. There would be potential for white to be peeping here at some point. Maybe not immediately, but setting it up with something in the center maybe. And so that would be an exchange that white would be maybe after playing something in the center first. But there would be some extra possible forcing moves that white would have towards the right side there. So it's a valuable move. I like this move. And white plays this one. So we can see white is sort of bargaining with the left side, saying, asking black if black is going to allow that value to be reduced.
Mm-hmm.
And black plays the attachment on the top. That's a thick move. But this has reduced the value of the 3 stones on the left side. But white continues this way. Now this is really interesting. Locally, this is going to fail, but there is the connection on the second line there. White goes back to the center. So you can see still white's not so serious about the left side, but white has made a kind of a back entrance there, back exit maybe. If white gets a stone here, let's have white play the game move and black play something like this, and then in an extreme variation. This is not how white's going to do it, but in some cases later in the game, white can get a ko here.
Yeah, I saw that, but darn, that looks
It's a terrible local ko, but
terrible. Yeah,
when white wins the ko, you can see the outside black group is going to be in tatters.
absolutely.
So again, it's a question of having a good ko threat.
That really
Not
good
at this
threat.
point. It's going to happen later in the game. So
Okay.
that's something that's a kind of a hidden threat there, which is again, it's reducing the value. It's reducing the value of these 3 stones, the 3 stones I've marked here. So that was the idea of white's move. It's a kind of a back exit that white is prepared. Probably not going to use it. The general idea is still to sacrifice those stones on the left side.
Right.
There's a little hidden threat there that's going to happen sometimes, and sometimes it's not going to happen. And for the time being, erasing the center is more important. So black counterattacks. So black is making use of this ladder, this stone that's captured in a ladder, threatening to cut white off in the center. And in some cases, black's going to have a better shape when black goes after the left side. So there's that possibility there too. So it's a kind of a 3-pronged attack. Oh, that was the game move. Sorry. I was thinking maybe a variation, but black actually does this immediately. So black's getting a good way to attack the left side, and white immediately plays this move. So white's cashing in on the squeeze in the corner at A, and still is threatening that that connection, the code connection on the left side. And so black just plays away, and is going back to the center.
Now this move, the cut.
Now the cut. And so this is making black's position in the center just slightly more thick, stronger. And for the time being, it's attacking those white stones on the lower side.
Right.
So white's going to add a stone. Oh, white didn't add a stone to the lower side. White added a stone to the right side. So that's interesting. But okay. So let's say white plays a stone here. It turns out the right side is not 100% alive. So there's a number of ways we could. I think black could just start with this stone there. And if white plays here, it does look a bit dangerous for white.
Yeah. I see.
White doesn't have 2 eyes.
No.
This way, maybe this way. It is, for the time being, maybe white's okay. It doesn't look completely lethal. White is winning the fight to capture by 1 move.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe white's okay.
maybe is a little worrisome.
Yeah. Well, I would be a bit worried. It looks like white's winning by one move in this case, even if white puts. So white's going to be okay, but there's some. It is a bit dangerous. So and this is a big move anyway. So I guess it's okay for white to play here. And black plays this one, but this is going to connect up to black's attack in the center actually. Because black starts with this. We're going to see some excitement in the center later.
That's a nice sequence for black, right?
A little extra.
Starting with the cut.
Yeah. So now white peeps. And there's that cutting point there.
Yeah.
But it being AlphaGo, black's not going to be straightforward in answering that.
No.
So black answers first on this side and then at A. So this is dealing with the cut by weakening again those marked white stones. So now if white cuts here, for instance, all black has to do is go after the marked stones. Relatively easy when black has that strong shape there. It is also setting up the hane at B, which we're going to see happening in the game. So black is setting up a way to cut white off in the center. And white's not going to answer that. White plays again in the center. And this is a point where, like, if white is just simply answering, let's say white answers something like that. Now that black has dealt with the cutting point, black can play, for instance, black can play this one. But black might choose to play this move. Or in this position, because white has the cut there, black could even just play here. Black will get an opportunity to play one more move in the center. So that's black's plan. White's not having that. So white plays again in the center, reducing black's territory in the center. So this is one of those games where it's really dangerous, but it's going to be a very close game. So the players cannot really afford to be backing off here. So now black cuts white off. And white cuts here, attempting to make an eye there. And black just adds a stone there. So if white makes the eye, if black runs out, white's going to have opportunities to connect up. Like with forcing move at A, it's going to be difficult for black to kill this white group. So black just sacrifices the one stone. White adds a stone there. It's still sort of ambiguous what's going to happen there, but if black tries to run away with the stone, at the very least, white's going to be able to connect up in the center. So, so to go back to the game, we can see black's territory there in the center is shrinking a lot.
Yeah, it's vanishing. It's just being erased.
But it's not really clear whether white's alive or not. That's the problem.
Well, that's what I'm trying to work out. I see, like,
there's no way you're going to work it out. It's just impossible.
I can stop bothering them. All right, fine.
Yeah. And you can see black is looking like he's pretty serious about this. White plays here. Now black adds a stone in the center. This not only is it sort of necessary, it's also making a difference to white's eye there. So capturing this stone has not really secured an eye for white yet. It's still at the status is a potential eye. It's not 100% made. So white switches back to the left side. So you can see here, while white has an opportunity to save the group in the center, territory is important too, because it's a very close game. And now black attacks the center. And this is where I'm debating whether AlphaGo misread this position.
Really?
Because this is really interesting. I had Leela go through it. And in exactly the same position where I was wondering whether AlphaGo had made a mistake, Leela did not see the geta.
Really?
So potentially they both made the same mistake.
Wow.
And I'm wondering if it's something to do with the program, because it's really interesting. It's a position it's a tricky net. So white plays here, threatening the ladder in A. We're going to see a very tricky net happening. It has to do with the problem that black has on the left side. So black pushes, this is the game variation. White's playing a forcing move in the center. It doesn't have any direct. And here white is trying to make eyes, but also is cutting black off. So you can see that black group on the left is cut off now. Black has taken away white's eyes. It looks like it's just a dead group. White plays here. Black extends. White connects. Now, this is threatening Black's group.
Yeah.
Black adds a stone to it. Black could have played at A. Now, I had a lot of fun with Black playing here, and I gave up on the idea of making a variation for you, because it's going to be a semi-eye. So that's what I'm talking about at this point, where the marked white group and the marked black group would get into a semi-eye. It's going to be a ko or a one move difference.
Wow.
And like it was a bit too complicated for me. I think actually Black had potential to win the game by playing here, maybe. So this is, after studying it for countless hours, I would say that this is the move that I would choose to play as Black.
It's pretty nice move.
You know, I mean, it's surrounding white. It's going to kill the white group, but it's going to be a very close fight to capture. There's various trades. There's a ko, and there's a one move difference in the semi-eye. I just couldn't find a way to handle all of that in one variation anyway, so I gave up. Yeah,
that's fair enough.
And so Black adds a move to the left side. And this is where we get to see the cute Tetsuji, because white plays at A, and Black's already dead. And Leela could not see this move.
Seriously?
Well, not on my computer. I'm calculating it locally. I do have a pretty good computer with, of course, a GPU. And Leela could not calculate it.
Wow.
The moment this move was played, the score value changed drastically.
Yeah.
Because the moment it was played, Leela then saw that the black stones were captured. So it could be a kind of a bug similar to the problem that Leela sometimes has with ladders.
Right.
Because the moment you escape from the ladder, if the ladder is not working, the moment you escape from it, Leela knows that the ladder is not working.
Right.
It doesn't take a second. It doesn't. It's a fraction of a second before it realizes that the ladder is not working. But before that, you can wait, and that escaping from the ladder is not even a move that's suggested.
Fascinating.
So it was interesting, and the fact that Leela made the same mistake, I still don't know whether this was an actual mistake by AlphaGo, because it's still a half-point difference. It's a very close game. It would have been a close game the other way. It could have been a close game that way also. Mm-hmm. In some of the trades I was working with, but so it's hard to say whether it was generally a mistake. It's too difficult for me, you might say. But just to show you how this is working, Black will try to escape the geta with this move.
I was just trying to work that out. It's
a ladder, so that's why I think I see a connection to the ladder here. It's a very short ladder, but I would call this a ladder. It's sort of dubious whether this can be called a ladder or not, but it's sort of like a ladder, so I'm calling it a ladder. It's a ladder-like shape.
It's a ladder-like shape.
Yeah, where white captures the black.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think it could be a weakness in Leela, which does have a bit of a problem with. It's getting better. It's improving, but it still has a slight difficulty with ladders. So that's the mistake, the potential, and of course, the moment this move was played, Leela realized that it was captured.
Wow.
And so Black starts to harass White, and this is still a very difficult end game. Suddenly, we're into the end game now.
Mm-hmm.
All of the fighting is over now that White has captured the cutting stones, and saved that group. White is sacrificing stones on the left side. And as we expected, sort of, White's never going to use this ko on the side. It's not going to happen until it doesn't work anymore, and we'll see that too. So Black is harassing White on the lower side, squeezing White just a little bit, and by that variation I was showing you, we can see that now once Black has a stone at A, Black is threatening. Why don't I do that? If White plays in the corner here, now it's not a ladder anymore. So that's
wow. Yeah.
So black cuts here, and white answers in the center. It makes sense. And it looks like it's a terrible disaster for black, but it's actually a very close game. Black's getting a lot, attacking white on the lower side. You might notice that white never had an opportunity to play this forcing move in the corner, and now it's gone. For the time being, at least, it's gone. White doesn't have that opportunity anymore.
Wow.
Because of the ko that's starting on the lower side. So black is getting a lot back, but it seems to me that black lost an opportunity to kill that white group in that variation that I was not showing.
Yeah.
Like I was just showing you the first move, and I couldn't go any further. But and so we're going to continue
complicated.
With that. Yeah, and this is also a point where at some point, if white had time, it's debatable whether white should have played this cut.
I meant to ask. Yeah, I've been wondering about that for a while because it's a lot of points, right?
Well, it's never big enough to actually spend a move on it. But this is a forcing move here. And when we get into an endgame position like this, then it's a good exchange for white to have on the board because it secures this move for white. So it's making a difference in the endgame. The problem is in the middle game, sometimes white wants to be doing stuff like this, or maybe we'll be looking to make use with those ko-threat for those 3 stones. Sometimes it's better not to have this on the board. So in an endgame position, white always wants to have this exchange in it. It's a profitable exchange. If black is going to play there first, it's good for white to have that exchange in before black plays that move.
I see.
But the endgame came to us so suddenly that white never had an opportunity to play that exchange.
Yeah,
so
it was like fighting. All of a sudden, okay, now we're
white was in danger of dying. White never had, and then white was in trouble on the lower side. So white never had an opportunity to play that. And I actually studied the endgame. There are some questions I had, so let's just breeze through it to this point. You can see white sort of threatening that ko, but not playing it. So white cuts here in the middle of black's territory. This is a really amazing move. But it has a lot to do with various things that could happen. First of all, if black plays here, white's going to play here. And you wouldn't think of this move, would you? And white's going to play here. And this is really a headache for black.
Oh, man.
There's this kind of stuff that could happen. The curl is going to be forcing. This is
Good.
This is just the variation. It's going to be a ko-de. So, like, after all of this, my conclusion is I don't really know because it's a ko. But yeah, this is as far as I got. But there is this big problem that black's going to have on the right side. White's probably going to start that ko. You can see that ko on the left side is going to be something white might be using to set up ko threats.
You probably don't remember, but when you saw this move here, how long did it take you to figure out?
A long time. I don't remember. but what was happening here in the game was obviously a hint because white played here anyway.
Right. Oh, okay.
So this is the variation I was showing you. Obviously, a lot more dangerous on the right side. This is the game move, and white played here anyway. So I was getting a hint. And it doesn't really work. In this position, again, it's a ko. So I'm going to show you what white is trying to do. The ko here started really confusing my explanation. So I'm going to ignore the ko, and I'm going to show you what white is trying to do. So let's say black cannot play the ko. We're just going to make a rule that black cannot play that ko. And it's going to make it easier for me to explain what white's trying to do, because white's looking at the cut here. And if this happens, then white can eventually use this Atari to connect all of white's stones. So white saves the whole thing. So there's a squeeze there that white is setting up. Even though white was late in playing that cut, white never got an opportunity to put that cut there. There's still this way that white can set it up. And if white has enough ko-threats, the problem is that white doesn't quite have enough ko-threats. But if white has enough ko-threats, white can make this work. Because at this point, if black goes down, white can escape here. This is going to be bad for black, too.
That is just so gorgeous. Seriously. That's just...
Well, I had a lot of help because I was watching the game. Yeah, the game really gave me a lot of hints here.
Still.
So there's this code that they're fighting, but white would really like to be playing this way, but it didn't, and it doesn't have enough code threats to play that whole exchange to the end. So white just immediately plays here, and plays this one. It's the same idea. So if black extends down here, it's going to be the same idea. Like at some point, white's going to play this one and combine the two problems for black. I'm not really sure what the order of moves should be. I've already messed it up, I think. But let's see. White probably has to play this side first, yeah, and then do that, yeah. So it's going to be trouble for black.
Good God.
Let's see. Let's just go a few more moves. Well, actually, in this variation, white can just play Atari here and get these stones from this side. So that's the easier way to do it. The variation I showed has white playing from above, and that works too. Black's going to lose. So black captures the one stone. White did get to reduce black's territory a little bit. So I guess that was a success for white.
Yeah.
Just those 3 marked stones. White did lose a bit in the upper right area, the corner.
Wow. I looked at that real quick and I just didn't see anything there.
Yeah, it looked pretty solid black territory, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And so now white takes the ko, and black plays. This is a really neat move. It has to do with the fact that white would like to play a forcing move here. But if black gets the hanging connection in the corner with this forcing move, now this is going to be a live shape.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if black had played the normal move here, then it's a different story because it's not a live shape. White can play this move and this move. This is going to be a ko. That's a bent corner.
Yeah.
So it's not a live shape. But if black plays the jump here, which looks like a really strange endgame move, and black does get to play this move, now it's going to be a live shape because even if white plays the next move in the corner, black at any point can back off here. And actually has a very resilient shape, so black would probably just continue the ko locally. So this is a counterintuitive move. Usually as an endgame move, it would be a failure. But in this case, it gives black that extra eye in the corner. It's really working. And now white counters with, we'll find white countering with this move, stopping black from playing that good shape at A. And like if white plays something like this, that loses a tempo. But when white plays this way, it's forcing. So white gets a tempo. And so this is in between the two variations, but still, when white captures here, now white's not going to be able to kill the corner. So black does have the opportunity to play away. White could play here, and now white would have to take the ko. So it's not going to die this time.
Mm-hmm.
Or it would be better for white just to take the ko now, as far as endgame is concerned. Something like this could happen. But again, because black played that move, this move, it's not going to be dead. At least it's going to be alive.
Right. It's just a question of points.
It's a question of points. Also, the fact that in actual play, they're going to fight the ko. The black is not going to back off here. The ko is going to continue for a while. So they're just playing normal endgame moves. White starts this ko in the upper left. Again, at this point, it's just an endgame move. It's not the ko that I was suggesting. But it's making a small difference. And the end game here, I studied it a bit. It's just super complicated. And everything is a half point. Like you can get a lot of half point variations. Let's see if I made a variation for it. I don't think I made a variation. With all these codes, it's just impossible to say anything for certain.
God, this is one of these just mind-bending games where it's just there's so much play left, you know?
Yeah, there's so much. There's a lot of codes there. Like there's
Yeah.
this big move in the center, which is not as big as it might seem. Just because if black plays something like, for instance, like this, then white has potential to squeezing from this side just a little bit, and so it's not so good. And so this move in the center. This move in the center is not as big as it seems to be. This would be intuitively the biggest move on the board.
Right.
But players are just not playing it so quickly. And the codes here, working out all of the codes was a bit of a nightmare actually. So
Yeah.
so I don't really have any good variations for you. There is this one. Oh, the one I just showed you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're playing the ko. People who like to study the endgame could have a lot of fun with this. But it's going to be very hard to get a full picture, you might say, because the end games are so complicated. All of the variations involve these codes that are being played in the game, and the number of code threats makes a difference. And there's this ambiguous ko on the right side. It ended up in this trade. And finally, it's a peaceful ending. And white's going to win by half a point. They're still fighting ko's, of course.
Yeah.
But at this point, I think white has an advantage in ko threats.
Wait.
So that's the game ending. Still, it's going to end with a lot of ko's on the board. Not quite. They're starting to fill them.
How many ko's
Good.
How many ko's did we have? I lost track of how many ko's there were on the board at the same time. Oh, it was just
probably I didn't count either, but I think it's about 7 or 8 ko's.
That's what I was thinking.
Like if you count 2 for the double ko's, there's double ko's. You have a variety of types of ko too. I think we have only 1 ko left at this point in the lower this point in the lower left area. There's a ko there. But black can connect that. It's black's turn. And white wins by half a point. So like in the area counting rules, the Chinese rules, black would like to have enough ko threats to fill all the liberties and finally connect here. And potentially black could gain a stone by doing that, 2 points in Japanese rules. But black just doesn't have enough ko threats. At this point, black will have to connect here. White wins by a quarter of a stone, or half a point.
It's a really beautiful game. You know, I just had another one of those sort of, looks like it's going to collapse, especially since last game we had that, big collapse. And this one, it looked a couple times like that was going to happen, including the really interesting, question about not seeing the what are you calling it? The ladder.
It was either a net or a ladder. Yeah. Or both. There's some cases where a net turns into something that looks like a ladder.
I'm going to call it a natter. It's a natter.
Oh, natter, okay.
That's not a word, sorry. Well, very, very cool. And I like the ones that go down to endgame just because for amateurs, it's something that I think we have a lot of trouble with. It's, usually we're short on time, especially if it's complicated and you're trying to make those decisions under time pressure. What's bigger, what's sente, what's gote, double sente, all that kind of stuff. So this is
I think you'd have to be pretty advanced in your end games to really enjoy this game in itself. But a lot of the AlphaGos do go to the end and they're pretty close. So they're good games to be studying the end game with.
Yeah. Or just maybe it just makes people's head hurt. I don't know. As always, Michael, wonderful stuff. Thank you so much for all the time that you put into it. Really appreciate that. I know everybody, does lots of comments. We'll probably try and get to some of the comments next time. As always, a big shout out to our producer, Babs, who's juggling not only the working with us, but the new baby in the school. And so, Babs, we appreciate it. Thank you. We always say it wouldn't be possible without the support of our AJ members, but without Babs, we'd be in big trouble. So thank you for that. And as always, thanks to our AJ members, and jump on over to usgo.org. Lots of cool stuff, and you can join the AGA, be a fellow member. So appreciate the support. Thanks again, and we'll see you all next week.